Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarai.
Amen.
Okay, good morning to all. Welcome back as we continue Likutei Moharan Ches. And yesterday we were learning really very much about what it means to sort of dismantle, like we were learning, the channel of the Rishaim that are drawing their Ruach Chaim from their aspect of Esav of Yeshli Rav. And what that is for a Tzaddik Gamor, and Rebbe Nachman says is an aspect of La Yu'unu Let Tzaddik Kol Aven, for that Tzaddik to be able to go down, so to speak, in some sense, into the Midah of the Rasha. We learned about the Turkey prince. And in that place, he's able to be mashbel Rishayim adei aretz. He's able to cast down the Rishayim, which Rebbe Nachman taught us is a Rosh Tevis of Eish Ruach Mayim Afar. It begins with the same letters as mashbel Rishayim adei aretz. Arma, right? Ayin Reish Mem Aleph, or Aleph Mem Reish Ayin, and the ability to really be mekalkal this aspect from which the Rasha is drawing on. But if the tzaddik is not a tzaddik gamor, and he's yarei me'averis shebiyada, even if he doesn't do any averis pragmatically, right, in a practical sense, but he has shebiyada, he has b'koichai lasais, he's still not completely removed from the aspect of averis. Such a person is not able to descend and to be empathetic, like somebody used that great word yesterday, to be empathetic, to feel empathy from the standpoint of the Rasha. Empathy means like you, not just you sympathize, right? You sympathize is from the outside, empathy is from the inside. You feel what the person's feeling, right? And in some sense, we're discussing the tzaddik, the Turkey prince, the person going under the table, feeling what the Rasha feels in some sense, and thereby replacing the oxygen source with real air instead of an artificial, some kind of mask, an oxygen mask, right? And in so doing, we replace the ruach that the Rasha is receiving from the Rav de Klipa, and we replace it with the energy that he's going to get now plugged into the much more natural channel of the Rav Chesed, right? And that's what we learned. Hashem, Kel Racham Chanan, Erech Apayim. That's the aspect we learned. Erech Apayim is the aspect of this ruach, which is the ruach of the Torah. It's not the ruach of the tzaddik, or it's the ruach of the Torah. The tzaddik is nothing. The tzaddik is a channel. The tzaddik is nothing at all. The tzaddik is a vacuum cleaner. He brings you to him and through him, straight to Kuchabrichu. Right? There is no, and that's what Rebbe Nachman says. We learned yesterday. Should simtzem atzmai lios ruach hachaim eitzal tzaddikim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzamtzim himself to become the Ruach Chaim that the tzaddikim are giving, which isn't them, like we said yesterday, right? The more that a person connects to a tzaddik, the more they recognize their own inner tzaddik, and they realize they don't need the tzaddik, because and that's Rebbe Nachman's, like his interpretation, like we said, the mashal of the bridge, where you have the treasure under the bridge, the treasure is by you. It's a go home, right? And you realize that you have it by you, and that's the inyan of the Ruach Chaim of the tzaddik that just gives you back what you lost. It gives you back what you always had, fundamentally, as a child, which is this natural sense, like we're speaking of wonder, of nisim l'malamei teva, of emunah, the opposite of amalei kriros. It's a whole consciousness that we've been building up from Torah Aleph to Torah Beis to Torah Gimel to Torah Dalet, Torah Hey, Torah Vav, Torah Zayin, and now Torah Ches, and it will continue. The whole Likutei Moharan is a consciousness. It's you take out the brain you had before and you put it in, and it functions. It's like a new motor. It's like a new, and this is what we mean when we say the ruach of the tzaddik. But it's really just to give us back our own ruach, our own natural Yiddish ruach that all of us have fundamentally from when we're children. We lose somewhere along the way. Okay, that's what we learned yesterday, and that's the inyan of what the tzaddik is able to accomplish. And kol hanilva melav, whoever is connected to the consciousness of the tzaddik, it is absolutely healing for people. I mean, Exhibit A, I can say it's been healing for me in a remarkable way. Rebbe Nachman shifted my whole life, away from being connected to whatever I was connected to, and gave me a new lease on life, in a very literal sense. I think many of us feel that. So let's carry on. Here we're looking, at Ois Zayin, and the tzaddik said, at Ois Vav. And the Rebbe says like this: how did the tzaddik get to this level? How does a person? So we learned about a person's a tzaddik amar. I want to be a tzaddik amar, right? How do I get to that level? To be mevatel the ra me'atoiv, Says the Rebbe, Al Yidei Torah Tefillah. There's no other way. There's just Torah and Tefillah, these two things. The limud Torah and the learning of Torah needs to be lalun lo'umka shel halacha, needs to be dwelling within the depth of halacha. And he's borrowing a terminology from Chazal, commenting on Yeshua, slept in Amek in the valley, and Chazal say be'umka shel halacha. And so a person needs to be connected to halacha to learn halacha, which we mentioned earlier as well in the context of Torah Vav, when we said that a person who wants to do tshuva needs to be a baki b'halacha. We learned that in a metaphorical sense, he needs to know how to walk. Baki b'shoiv, baki b'ratzai, baki b'shoiv, ayel v'nafik, right? That whole Indian over there with yabak, right? The shemas, the two times which come out your derech, v'chule v'chleina. But if you hear the Rebbe saying it very directly, you have to learn paiskim. Ki yesh pa Torah achiza Torah, because Torah in and of itself has in it the aspect of Taiv and Ra. The whole Torah is a big mevucha, especially Talmud Bavli. Talmud Bavli is darkness. All right, Chazal say this. Choshech, right? The pasuk says, "You have placed me in the dark like the eternally dead." And Chazal comments Talmud Bavli. Right? We learned that in Torah Gimel. Right? Laila, how did Moshe Rabbeinu know when it was day or night when he was on the mountain 40 days, 40 nights? In the day he was learning Torah Shabbat. In the nighttime he was learning Torah Shabbat Peh. And it's dark. Why is it dark? It's the heiligste thing in the world. It's the most holy thing in the world. Take a look at the Medrash Tanchuma Parshas Noach. The whole thing is on learning Gemara. It's mamish, unbelievable. From the standpoint of Chasidus, if you learn that from the standpoint of other standpoints, it's not so kishmak. But if you learn it from the standpoint of Chasidus, you're operating with the consciousness of Ahavas Hashem and loving Hashem and feeling Hashem's love, the chizik for learning Gemara there is English shire. Amish, not to be believed. I really highly encourage you to look up the Medrash Tanchuma Noach. But be that as it may, there's a tremendous light in Torah Shabbat Peh. In what sense is it dark? The sense in which it is dark is because it's a mevucha gedola. It's incredibly complex and not in a good way. It's not supposed to be complex. Arachim k'shulchan aruch. We just learned 2 parshas ago, and in the last Torah, the Eila mishpatim asher tasim lefneim arachim k'shulchan aruch. It's not supposed to be complicated. It's the more arrogant and the more ego-oriented a person is, the happier they are when the limud is so complicated, because then they're able to show that there's such a lamdan. It's not supposed to be lamdanas. It's supposed to be easy and simple and straight and direct. We've built a system on learning the areas of Torah that are so complex that you have a bunch of lamdanim walking around. It's not the goal. The goal is that a person should be a yadon, not a lamdan. Right? The goal is that a person should know things. Because you could have people big lamdanis. At the end of the zman, they say nahat and kvetch the sugya. They can't tell you one clear thing about it. Literally, they can't tell you one clear thing. What's the halacha? Nobody knows. They can tell you every, achrin and this and ar sameach and everything else. They can't tell you what's the halacha. What comes out from it. Arachim k'shulchan aruch. We're supposed to learn easy, mamish direct. So why did Chazal make that there should be something called Talmud Bavli? Or more accurately, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu cause, as the Rambam says in his Perish and his Hakdama to Perish HaMishnayos, it's a very famous Hakdama also, it's very important to read that, right, where he explains what the breakdown was and how the whole thing happened, that in history we ended up, because we had clarity. You have to understand, Moshe Kibbutz Torah Misidim, Yeshua, it was nucky and barer. It wasn't in the Torah Shabbat as we have it. It was clear. It was totally clear. There wasn't volumes and volumes and volumes and trying to work out and straighten out all the things that had become twisted. Nothing had become twisted that was later on in history. And that's like mind-opening. It's like, wow, Torah used to be different, and it will be different. We've smoothed out the wrinkles. We've smoothed out the, largely, but there's still more work to do, and there's still, because circumstances continue to change, and we need to apply halachic sugyas in new ways, and that's why we have to go back into the engine. But why, from the standpoint of Pnimius HaTorah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused that there should be a thing called Talmud Bavli? The answer is very simple. Because there's a spiritual component to the experience of working through Suffolk and coming to clarity. In the Arizal, that's the avoida of working through the klipas. Mamish. Learning Gemara, it doesn't just have a religious value from the standpoint of this is what we do. From the Arizal, it was an avoida. Don't get me wrong, it's an avoida for everybody to learn Gemara because it's Talmud Torah. I'm saying much deeper. The Ari HaKadosh saw learning Gemara as a spiritual exercise. that was much more particular than simply sitting in front of a Talmud and learning, because what else are you supposed to learn? Right? It was a lechatchila, an avoida of berer haklipos, of berer anitzaitzim, of working through a mavucha and 5 shitas and keeping track and tracking them through in l'shitasam v'chule until you came out with halacha l'maisa. The crazy thing is that our system doesn't ever come out almost ever to halacha l'maisa unless you happen to be learning an halacha koilo. And even then it's probably too late, because you already turned off half the population because they have no interest in sitting on what they perceive to be wasting their time, and sometimes it's not so much a perception vis-a-vis what it could be if we were learning in a way that brought people to clarity. We're not bringing people to clarity largely, and so in relation to walking out of Azman with clarity, people feel like they're wasting it. They don't feel any sipuk. And how should they feel sipuk? Unless you're talking about the 5% and the top 5% of, let's say, a regular yeshiva, the Bachram who are really taking it, and chazering, and they're finishing the Masechta every year. Fine. But everybody knows that most of the guys in the yeshiva are not doing that. And most of them, therefore, are not going to get to sit and learn Alibah Hilchasa. And so it's you basically take them into this realm of darkness and lead them there, but they never come to the light. The goal, though, is to come to the light. So Torah, says the Rebbe, Ki yesh ba'Torah achizas ha'toy v'hara, shenachazim bebechinas iser v'heter tama v'tar kasher u'pasal. There are these 6 aspects which are connected to Shisha Sidrei Mishnah that are, all of halacha fits into one of these categories. It's either aser or mutter, it's either tameh or tar, it's either kasher or pasal, and these are associated with the 6 days of the week, which are themselves associated with the Eitz Hadas Toiv Ra, and that's why it has an aspect of Toiv and an aspect of Ra, klape the Eitz HaChayim, which is halacha l'maisa. Eitz HaChayim is things that are clear. It's a tree of life. It's not a tree of Misa, which is b'machshak and moishivane k'meisei oilam, right? There's a connection between Misa and darkness, right? Because a person feels like something dies in them all the while that they're removed from clarity, because that's the Bechina of Amalek, which is suffix, which is death, right? Because a person stays in the suffix. A person stays in the suffix. V'chol zman she'eina mavar halacha, all the while that a person does not clarify the halacha, hu ma'ariv tayvara, that person's experience of limud Torah is a mixture of good and the opposite. And that's why Chazal tell us that if a person is zoiche, nasloi sam chayim. A person could be a huge Talmud Chacham, and the Torah gives them sam chayim. A person could be the same Talmud Chacham, and it's sam maves. And I hope that you then still have a little sensitivity inside of them to be able to sense whether somebody's Torah, it could be the biggest Talmud Chacham in the world, it could be mamish poison, or whether it's mamish coming sam chayim. And sometimes I'm not so sure whether Jews still have that sensitivity sometimes, and it scares the heck out of me. We have to be sensitive. You have to hear where it's coming from. Because Talmudic knowledge doesn't impress me. It never, ever did. It never did. Someone sent me a clip recently of somebody giving a shiur, and oh my goodness. How could anybody continue to listen to that particular person? The degree of anger and berating that person who's, wild stuff, shouting. And Torah, it's just, it has to come from a lathe that's bursting with yearning for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Otherwise, it literally becomes a poison, and it's not me saying this. Chazal said it. They literally said it. Sam maves. Sam maves. So it's not impressive. A person's a computer. It's not impressive. It has to come from a Yiddish heart. That's the most important thing. But the Ishbitzer, he said that what he learned from his father was not the shiur, it was the way that the father kissed the Gemara after the shiur. It's not about the shiur. It's about the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a shiur on Har Sinai. But it wasn't about the shiur. It was about HaKadosh Baruch Hu by Yered Hashem al Har Sinai. He was Yered to us. He kissed us on the forehead. He also threatened us with death under the mountain in Echanami. But that, according to the Rav Shitzer, that was just a joke. That was the joke before the shiur. You understand? There's more to Limud HaTorah than just this. And if we set up a system where the only thing that we value is how much, Gemara can get crammed through your ears into your face, we're missing something fundamental. Not all the time, I'm generalizing, but some of the time. And that little some of the time is nishtalshal down into the consciousness of the community, and it's sam maves. It really is sam maves. And we have to correct it. And the Rebbe says this: "V'chol zman she'ena mevar ha'halacha hu ma'ariv toiv v'rav yal kein ena yachal lahafrish olavat al rami ha'toiv." And therefore, this person, in and of his own self, hasn't worked out the Tov from the Ra, hasn't gotten to clarity, Mamela in his own life, he's going to struggle with Tov and Ra. The Rebbe says elsewhere the Talmud is Gematria Lilis, which is the female demon. Because it's dangerous. Talmud is dangerous. A person can get stuck in the Rasha book. And it can cause all the midas rois in the world, and even some that you haven't even thought of, can come out through this kind of consciousness. But we have to go into it. Yes, because we have to be mevarer it. But if a person stays in it, it can be samadas. So a person has to be careful to separate the ra from the toiv. The pasuk in Mishlei says a person who seeks out evil, it'll come upon him. Right, so it's the bechina v'doirish ra, not to seek it, but to darshan the ra, so to speak, to then you'll arrive. Right? If a person wants to work through this stuff and a person wants to really get through it, there's almost only one way. The only way is Gemara, but the only way is through the Gemara. It's not, you understand, is to journey through the spiritual experience of Gemara. It doesn't mean to stay away from Gemara. That's for sure not going to help you. We have to learn Gemara, right? We're gifted with the opportunity and the beauty of learning Gemara. But the beauty of learning Gemara, al pi da Arizal, is to work through a sugya and to come to psak halacha. That's coming to clarity. Otherwise, you get stuck. And again, this is really what was railed against by the Kadmonim about the pilpul. If you look in the Archas Tzadikim at the end, if you look in the Maral, if you look in the Ramchal, all the Tzadikim who we quote and we love and we adore railed against a lot of what's happening today. And it could be argued that it's not exactly the same pilpul, but it's similar enough. It's similar enough because they knew what Liman Torah was supposed to be. The Maral wrote that if it were up to him, he never would have put Taisus on the page of the Gemara. Because what are you going to Taisus for before you don't know the Gemara itself? How are you going to go to Taisus? You have to learn just the sugya first. And people are getting stuck and they haven't worked through just the Aimek Hapshat, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so this is the way that the system is set up, and there's hashkacha about that too. Fine, but we have to come to psak. We have to come to clarity. Otherwise, our bachurim, our students, ourselves are not going to feel any sipuk. We're not going to feel any sense of accomplishment, and I think that's very reasonable. So b'dayrish ra to the end, you got to be darshan it, and you got to come to the end of it. Until you come to the halach in the end, and then you have clarified through this experience of be'er haklipus and mevar ha'isr v'hamuter v'chulei. Then a person's clarified the Isser from the Mutter, and the Tar from the Tameh, and the Kasher from the Pasal, as I mafresh hatayv me'ara. Now you have clarity. You've straightened it all out. You've broken through Suffolk, and you've arrived at Vados, which is Havadai Shemai, Kain Tila. So you've found HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But says the Heilige Rebbe, in order to get to this consciousness, that a person should be Zaycha to even want to come to Umkush Alalacha Hu Ayidei Tefillah, is only through the aspect and the consciousness of davening. Because that's where true seichel comes from tefillah. And again, everything that we're learning, it's not just the literal translation. You have to bring it out into a much more applied level. And the much more applied level of tefillah is that we learned that tefillah doesn't just mean to pray. Tefillah is a consciousness. Everything is a moichin, right? Tefillah means it's a consciousness of anivos. It's a consciousness of dependency. It's a consciousness of coming before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and recognizing that I don't have. That's fundamentally what tefillah is. Tefillah la'ani kiyatov. David HaMelech, Malchus, Ani Avadala doesn't have. And it comes before the Siba, and it says, I know it is the Siba, comes before the Mesaviv, or the one that's causing, and saying, I require, that's a consciousness of tefillah. Says the Rebbe, nobody's going to be interested in learning straight halacha if they're not really looking to serve Hashem. Because if they're really just serving for intellectual stimulation or to pride themselves on how bright they can be, and the guys are peeking in the Raza de Shabbat, the sefer, the sefer that has like all the good kashas, and they peek at it before, and then they asking the kashas, ki'ilu, so what's that all about? That's not a Buddhist Hashem. Who do you think you impressed? Not maybe some classmate or some sheer guy, not God, and not the Rebbe either, but not God, not impressing Hashem. What's the whole inyan? in order to mamish learn be'emes, if a person wants to get to the halacha, that they should be zayich lishmer valasis of the kayim, even if it isn't so impressive, and even if a person learns Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it's not the most impressive limud. You're not going to get a big, pat on the back, and so it's going to say, psh, what a lamdin. But it wasn't about that, because you approached limud Torah with a consciousness of tefillah. With a consciousness of tefillah, then mali acham mali asam. I just want to serve Hashem. Let it be pashat. Halavai, it should be pashat. Halavai, we shouldn't have to be the biggest. Halavai, we just, because Hashem wants the lave. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that with our lave, we should work through what needs to be worked through. And we should do all the tikkunim. And part of the tikkunim are mitzvahs, part of the tikkunim is Torah, part of the tikkunim is midas taivas, part of the tikkunim is chesed, etc. Everything has its tikkun, but a person approaches liman Torah with a consciousness of tefillah, which is a consciousness of avodah fundamentally. A person wants a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, says the Rebbe, then you can learn sugyas to get to the halacha. Otherwise, you're gonna get stuck, because the arrogance wants to keep you in the impressive part, and not in the practical part. Right? Kamisham nimshech haseicha, says the Rebbe, you're gonna get your seicha from tefillah. And here it gets a little bit complicated, but we'll try. It's brought in the Likutei Tikunim gan da'iraisa. When it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a gan in Eden, and Nahar Yotzim Eden Lahashkes is a gan, Umishami Par Arbarashim, that there was a river flowing from Eden to water the gan. What is that gan? Says the Zohar Kadosh, the Tikkun Zohar, gan da'iraisa. That's a reference to the Torah. Ki Torah nikres gan. Torah is called a gan. V'nishmas Yisrael hama'ayinim umevinim b'Torah, and the souls of Am Yisrael, and the words are very precise, who are ma'ayin and mevinim. Right? They're ma'ayin in it, and they understand it. They don't just learn it, but they come to a clear understanding about Torah. Heim b'chinas asavim udesham de'israviu began. They are the aspect of grasses that are growing in that gan, because each and every one of us and our sharshe neshama are connected to a letter, right? A letter in the Torah. 600,000 root letters in the Torah, even though there are far less, but there are different calculations of how you get to that. And there are 600,000 root souls of the Jewish nation, even though there are far more Jews, right? But it's just Geulah neshamas and Nitzotzi neshamas. So we're connected to the Torah. So we're growing in the Gan, and we want to grow through our Limud Torah, and we love learning Gemara, and we love and we adore it, and we're not advocating for the opposite. We absolutely adore. The more you learn Panemius, the more you love Gemara, because you understand very deeply why learning Gemara fits into a broader construct of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the avodah of Be'er HaNitzotzes v'chulei. The more connected you are to Gemara. The thing that connected me most to Gemara was Tanya Parak Dalet. Barak Hey, those prakim over there that are speaking about the intimate connection that a person, there's no greater connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than grasping His will, and at the same time His will is grasping your mind, and your mind is grasping the seichel, and the seichel is grasping the muskala, and he says there's no greater form of intimacy, because I needed it in the language of relationship. I needed it as a prayerful Torah, as a relationship-oriented Torah. And it's like the craziest twist of irony that growing up in Litvish yeshivas my whole life, the thing that gave me chizik to learn Gemara was Chasidus. The more that a person gets into Chasidus, the more they should be learning Gemara. The more respect, the more understanding, the more cheshek they should have for learning Gemara. But it has to be done properly. It has to be done with a consciousness of prayer, and a simcha, and a humility, and a yearning to see our Ein Sof in every letter. We don't give it over that way, and instead it becomes like this, this contest of who's the brightest kid in the shir. And anybody who's left behind feels left behind, and with all of the repercussions down the line and across the board. We have to address these issues, chavra. We have to address them. If we don't call them out, they won't get addressed, and we'll continue to suffer. We'll continue to suffer. We have to be able to call these things out, and because Baruch Hashem, with joy, we can correct them. We can correct it. We will correct it. So the neshamas are supposed to grow through the Torah. And we are watered like grasses growing in the garden of Torah, that we grow through Torah, but we have to be watered. Where are we watered from? We said that there's a mayan that flows forth from Eden, lahashkes esagan, right? So what is that mayan? Says the Zohar Kadosh, the Chochmah. There is a river in these gardens, And that river in the gardens is Chochmah. And that goes back to Torah Aleph, where we spoke about the deep relationship, if you remember, between Nun, which is Malchus, and Ches, which is Chochmah. It's a bechin of the pasuk that says Hashem b'Chochmah yasad Aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu established Aretz, which is always Malchus, with Chochmah. And based on that, the Zohar Kadosh says Abba Yasid Barta. The father has a deep connection with the daughter. It means the father is Chochmah, right? That's the aspect of Chochmah. Right, the bechina, the parts of Abba, the letter Yud of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and then the Hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei is the daughter, is the bechina of Nukvas Bas, and Soif Maser b'Machshavat Chila. The beginning and the end are always bound up with each other. Reish is Chachma, and Malchus is Soif. Right, and there you have a connection between the two very deeply. It's the Mayan of Chachma that's going and giving life to the garden. Mayan Ganim. Now, where do you get Chochmah and Seichel? Hu bechinas. Shehu bechinas hamayan. Where do you get that aspect of the river, which is going to give a person's experience of Liman HaTorah? It's going to give you life. It's going to be full of vitality, not full of misa and gaiva and everything that's chas v'shalom, the opposite of the ruach of Rachmanim Baishanim Goyim Lechasadim. It's going to be the opposite of fortifying a bacher's Yiddishkeit and an adult's Yiddishkeit, chas v'shalom. The mamash diab is going to be marchikim from Hashem, and not even though it's under the guise, and that's what's the craziest, insidious thing about it, which is also Torah Aleph, if you remember, the kitzutzitza denur chivarta bereisha, right, with the Rabbi Bar Bachana, how the wave had a white tip, and the Rebbe said because the Yitzhar is naslabish himself in mitzvahs. That's why it's the worst Yitzhar of all, because a person will feel like a big Talmud Chacham. Don't forget, it says in the Medrash that the Malach of Esav showed up battling Yaakov Avinu, also very relevant to Torah Aleph, and many of the other Torahs that we learned in the form of a Talmud Chacham. That's what the Medrash says, one of the opinions. And the Medrash or the Gemara, Mamish in the form, like he could show up as a Talmud Chacham. He could show up as, and that's why it's the worst Yitzhak, because then the person will say, what do you mean? I'm learning Gemara. This is our Messiah. This is not our Messiah. Because you can learn all the Gemara you want, but if it's disconnected from the real Messiah of David HaMelech, of Tzamalecha Nafshi Kamalecha Besari, of Nafshi Ka'aretz Ayefalecha Sela, Pischli Shari, Tzedek Avavam Aidaka, of all these psukim, then it's not our Messiah. No matter how much Gemara you were learning, if you think that's how they were learning Geulah, you're out of your mind. If you think that you have to learn Nefesh HaChaim, I beg everybody all the time, you don't have to be Hasidish, you don't have to be anything. Look at Nefesh HaChaim, but learn the whole thing. Shar Aleph and Shar Beis and Shar Gimel, and of course Shar Daled, but that's all they learn, right? Shar Daled, because Shar Daled talks about Liban HaTorah, but Shar Aleph is about Gadlus Adam, Shar Beis is about Tefillah, Shar Gimel is about Eibishter. In the deepest ways, these people had hearts the size of the universe. They weren't brains walking around, carried by their bodies. They were hearts. They were holistic. All of our gedolim, across the board. So our Messiah is mamish. Sure, our Messiah is to learn Gemara. We have to, and that's the tikkun. That's the bear of our time. But it has to be coming with real seichel that's full of vitality, so that the grass, which is the gan, and the neshamas that are growing from the grass and the gan, which are you and me, that we're alive. So where does that come from? Where does that ma'ayan that's giving life to the gan, where does it come from? And the answer is humeat tefillah. It comes from a consciousness of prayer. How do we know? Kamaisha kasuv u'ma'ayan, the pasuk says in Yoel, u'ma'ayan mi beis Hashem yetze. That river flows forth from the Beis Hashem, from the house of God. What's the house of God? Hu'at tefillah. That's a connection to tefillah. Kamaisha kasuv ki beisi beis tefillah. Do you understand that this paragraph is the healing of our entire community? Just this paragraph. If you took nothing else out of Likutei Moharan but this paragraph, you could already heal 90% of the issues that are all a result of a corrupted hashkafa that places the learning of Talmud as the singular or near singular religious value, that cuts out as a b'diavad 80% of our kids who aren't going to be able to do that their whole life, and then shoves everybody into kollel for the rest of their life, even though that might not be their particular sharash hashama and their derech. That causes terrible financial issues and crookery and all kinds of terrible things, and causes shalom bias issues and tremendous self-image issues. V'chule, 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 v'chule. All symptoms of this fundamental thing, because we've mamish lost the plot largely. And again, I'm generalizing, I'm not criticizing. It's out of love and compassion and a tremendous joy, because I know that we can heal. It's so easy. It's not like we're not fetching about issues. We can heal it, and it's so beautiful and joyous, and it is happening, but we have to accelerate it. And the way to accelerate it is by speaking clearly and definitively and pointing our finger at what needs to be fixed and pointing another finger at the solution and saying, make a shidduch, bring the solution to the issue and fix it. It's eminently fixable. But this paragraph is it. Limud Torah is a must. Limud Talmud is a must. But it comes from tefillah. It needs to be rooted. The Mayan flows forth from the Beis Hashem. Then it comes down into the Gan, which is Araisa. But if our Torah is not connected to the Mayan of tefillah, and if people are leaving shacharis early so that they could get to Seder, Ki'ilu, we're outsmarting HaKadosh Baruch Hu that said that there should be davening l'chud and Torah l'chud, so then we've lost something really, really important. Really deeply important. It's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. This is the aspect of bringing something mikoyach, from a state of potential, el apoyal, to a state of actuality. What does this mean? Ki tefillah b'chinas chidush ha'olam. Because tefillah is the aspect of renewing the world. Ki tefillah shemamin sheyesh mechadesh. We learned in Torah Zayin that tefillah means that a person really believes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really believes that there's a mechadesh, really believes that nothing's ever stuck, and believes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could change everything all the time. That's what tefillah means. A person believes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could change everything. A person really lives with that consciousness. We live with the Eibishter. We live with this constant realization that there's a God in the world. This is God's world. The world is made out of getlichkeit, of godliness. The world, mamish, Hashem is moich al haaretz kavod. Hashem is this. Hashem is not elsewhere. Hashem is here. And Hashem is elsewhere. But Hashem is here. And he could be Meshana Teva, B'chinas Bria B'koyach. And that's the aspect of creation in potentia, or in potential. K'may shekasav kulam B'chachma asisa. And we learned that Chochmah is tefillah, right? Because Chochmah, the seichel, flows forth from the Beis Hashem, and the Beis Hashem is tefillah. Ki beisi beis tefillah. And a person lives with that consciousness. You create and recreate everything b'chachma, mechadesh, b'tuvay, b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereishis. Every split second, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is recreating the universe out of His love, out of His chesed. Like we said, that's where the chachma flows forth from the mayan and from the bias of tefillah. So that's tefillah. Tefillah means that you're connecting to that place, the root of existence, where it's still b'koyach, where nothing's happened yet. Because tefillah can change everything. Tefillah goes into the inner working of the code, and it can alter the code, and then it can change the way that the world was built. Now, how was the world built? How was the world constructed? We learned in last week's parsha, right? And the Chazal, the Gemara Brachas about Betzalel. Betzalel knows how to build the Mishkan, right? How did he know? Because the Gemara says, Yodea haya Betzalel letzarv oisiyos shenivru behem shamayim va'aretz. Betzalel knows how to construct the Mishkan because he knows the letters of the Torah with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created heaven and earth. So Bria B'Poyel is Torah. Right? The actual construction of reality is Torah. Because Hashem was a stakabai, so bara alma, God looked into the Torah and created the world. The world is built out of the building blocks of the Oisias. Take a look in Sharicha V'Amunah of the Baal Tanya, Parak Aleph, Parak Beis. The world is created out of letters. The world is created out of, there's the building blocks of existence. But Tefillah is the Bechina of the Mechadesh, which is Bria B'Koyach. Okay, Koyach means potential, Poyal means actual. So this is another deep relationship between Tefillah and Torah. Torah is Bria B'Koyach, and Torah is Bria B'Poyal. So it says the Rebbe, V'ha-Torah b'chinas Bria B'Poyal. Torah is the aspect of actualized creation. The Pasuk says, I was in Amayin by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it says Uman. Don't say that it was Amayin, a nursling, rather Uman, which means a craft material. Lashon Poyal. It means that it was a practical thing, right? Not for nothing, Uman is Uman, right? It's also Uman. Uman Rosh Hashanah, right? It's Poyal, meaning it brings something and makes something real. It's a real thing. Right? But Poyal, it's all about Poyal. Kibat Torah Nivra Olam. Because the world was created with the Torah. Kishem Espalal is a davar. And when a person davens about something, Bechinas Chidush Olam, you're drawing on those effervescent, primordial waters that are deep, 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 deep beyond the surface of our existence, and you're going mamish into the shirish, where you believe that this world doesn't have the ceiling that it looks like it has. You aren't limited in the way that you think that you are. You can david. It means in that moment you're opening your consciousness to that realm of nisim, like we learned again in Torah Zion. In that moment you're out of galus. In that moment you're not constricted. This is the ruach of the tzaddik, which is just the ruach of yadus, but the tzaddik brings it out of us. And it connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a person is able to live in a world of prayer, and a world of hope, and a world with our problems, which we've pointed out very, very clearly, and our solutions. And we're not stuck. And things can change, and things can evolve, and things can develop, and things can produce, and things don't have to be stuck. They don't have to be stuck. What a joyous, optimistic world to live in. It's a prayerful world. Oh, that's a difficult 2 words to say. Prayerful world. Mamish. And a person's living with hope. See, he says, this is Chidesh Ha'olam. V'hu b'chinas bria b'koyach. You're connecting to existence as it exists currently in a state of potential. V'hu b'chinas esaras ha'chachma shu b'tefillah. And that wakes up the consciousness of tefillah, the seichel of prayer. U'ma'yan mebeis Hashem yetzei. And that seichel flows forth from prayer, that a person comes out of davening. Your consciousness needs to change. It isn't, wrap the tefillah on, wrap no one up, you murmur through tefillah, you rush out of it. Person comes out of prayer, you have to feel, we're going to learn it to our test because it's all a continuation. Zion, Ches, and Test are mamish one thing. They really are. You'll see in Test, Rebbe Nachman says the ikar chiyas of a person needs to come through prayer, needs to come through tefillah. Right? He brings it from a pasuk. David Amel says tefillah lekel chayai, right, which literally means I will pray to the living God, or the God of my life. Rebbe Nachman says tefillah lekel kama. When a person davens to Hashem, chayai, that's my life. Tefillah needs to give a person life because it's supposed to help us plug into this consciousness of emunah. So this is what it should be, and that enables the flow of real seichel, real wisdom and consciousness to flow forth from the bias of tefillah ki beis tefillah. Because that's where Chochmah comes from. And from that place the mayan of prayer flows forth into the realm of liban Torah, and then a person is able to learn and a person is able to humble themselves and recognize that even though I might not look like the greatest lamdan in the world, tachlis, I know what to do because I want to serve Hashem. I don't just want to exercise my brain, but I want to mamish serve God. And then you can bring it mikoyach el hapayal. And I recognize that halacha means that it's giving me an ability to connect to the prayerful spirit the whole day long, even not when I'm just in shul davening, because that's what halacha is. Halacha means halicha, like we learned, to walk with Hashem in every minute of my life. And in halacha, a person finds the neshama of tefillah in the vessel of halacha. Whatever a person does, the most common example is the first halacha maybe we encounter come out, right? Putting on our shoes, right? Where a person's putting on his right shoe and then his left shoe and then tying his left shoe and then tying his right shoe. And that is supposed to mamish bring a person to moichin gedolim. Wow. I start my day with having a contact with this mechadesh. And I begin my day realizing that whatever problems I'm dealing with, whatever challenges, whatever's on my plate today, whatever I think I have to accomplish today, it's all literally plugged in to the shirish habriya, where anything is possible and everything is possible. This is the inyan of liman halacha that's plugged into the realm of bria b'koyach, and then it comes down into bria b'poyal. V'sham yaitzi ala poyal, k'moshe kasav mipiv dasu tvuna. From a Kadosh Baruch Hu's mouth comes dasu tvuna. Ki ba'Torah hu is galas ha'chachma Torah, which is mipiv, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu spoke the Torah to us. That from there comes Chochmah. And Chochmah, which is the Mayan, comes into the Gan, comes into the Torah. Shemayan mashka hagan, that the river flows forth out of the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Tefillah, and it saturates the garden, and it saturates our experience of halacha, which is Bria b'Poyal. And then you could be Mekar of Yidin. And then you could be Mekar of your own neshama. And then everybody wants to learn halacha. Everybody wants to keep Torah mitzvahs because they see that it's life-giving and it's not life-destroying. and they see Gewalt. I want to be connected to this. I want to have such a relationship with Hashem that fortifies a brand new consciousness, that enables me to be a shining light in the world, that enables me to live with all my voids filled, that I'm not papering things over, and I'm not drawing Ruach Chaim from the Sitra Achra, and I'm not... Who doesn't want that? It's everything that we're looking for. It's literally everything that every human is looking for, but we're just not speaking their language because they don't put the two and two together. It's like Ma Kesher, Torah, and Tefillah to that. And the answer is, what do you mean? That's what Torah and Tefillah is, but we don't package it right. We don't market it right. It's literally the answer to that. And if people felt like it was the answer to that, they'd come running. They would come running. They'd come running. But we've somehow in the community drawn like some kind of demarcating line between mental health and Torah, as if these are two completely different things. And the Rabbanim sort of tolerate it, that there are now these things called therapists, but it's a mevucha, because from their standpoint, like what a therapist? Where does that come from? We have Torah. Okay, so then there are Raifim, but like, are they really? Because like, these are issues that seem to be shaykh to like emunah and simcha. These are religious things, but they're not religious things. But what are they? They're somewhere in between. But the Rabbanim have to tolerate it because their Torah isn't working. If it was working, we wouldn't have the issues that we have. And so they don't know the answers, and so somebody else is coming, b'vakasha. But they're still very conscious of it. And what we don't realize is that hainu hach, not all the time. I'm sitting in front of a psychiatrist here, so I'm totally aware that there are some cases, right, where a person is dealing with a severe mental health issues that need to be resolved medically, and I'm not talking about that now, but I'm talking about the surface level, base level stuff that people are popping antidepressants, like you wouldn't believe. This stuff can be resolved. It can be resolved. It could be medication is necessary to get a person back to base level. V'chule. These are huge sugyas. I'm not obviously going to do the whole thing justice now in 2 seconds. But if we think that Torah has nothing to say about these things, we're fundamentally mistaken. And if we think that the way that a person thinks doesn't end up influencing their neurobiology, I mean, again, you could maybe have a different opinion, right? I think that's pashut. That's a davar pashut. Because all of our issues have begun over the last 20, 30 years. And these two things are absolutely related. So I believe that if we can give kids a healthy sense of self and a healthy sense of mental health from their youth, which we for sure can, coming from Torah, and that not that Torah should be the place that gives them chas v'shalom the opposite of that through guilt and shame and terrible, terrible self-image issues, then we'll be fine. We'll be fine. But Torah absolutely has what to say about it. Sometimes you need the intervention, and sometimes you need the techniques that come from Chochmah Megayim Tamin, and there's a lot of value, and I've gained personally a tremendous amount from the therapeutic world. I'm not saying a comment chas v'shalom against that. But what I'm saying, I think, is a nuanced thing, is that the Torah has to be the heart and soul of that experience. How many therapists tell me now that they that their therapeutic sort of platform and the diploma and the degree on their wall is just a front for Hasidus. Like all they're giving over is Hasidus. They just give it over as, like there's even one Reb Joey Rosenfeld, who I highly recommend everybody look him up, and he is mamish, like he's Chad Bedara in many ways. He's a pella. If you want to know what prayerful Torah looks like, I'm not even a good example because I'm so frustrated all the time that sometimes I also speak harshly. If you want to see what Emus looks like, look up Reb Joey Rosenfeld. Look up Reb Joey. Oh, he's something special. He's something so special. Please look him up on YouTube. See, he's a psychotherapist, I think, and he originally, now he made Aliyah and he's working with Yiddim, but he lived in St. Louis and he was working with Goyim, and he was writing papers on the theory of Nachman of Bratslav. He was turning all Hasidus into theories, because that's the language that they need. So instead of the theory of Adler and Freud and this one and that one, why can't the Magen Mizrich have a theory? So it's just academic terminology. It's just thoughts. It's all just thoughts. And these thoughts are much better thoughts. Sometimes those thoughts align. And Jung, said that already. He said that the Magen Mizrich anticipated his whole theology. He was an interesting individual. But these all he said that Peferish. You could Google that. That's not, and I'll say even a sharper thing, and then we'll end. But I'll say even a sharper thing that Rabbi Dr. Tursky, Olav Shalom, said Bepem Male. He said that the great psychoanalysis, in that realm of the psychologist, he says, or the great psychological theories, this is his lashon, it's not my lashon. Don't blame me. I'm just telling you what he said. He said, are the illegitimate children of the great Hasidic masters. He said, in some way they're connected, but like they're mamzerim, like they're the Hasidim were rife in nefashos. You know what that means? They healed souls, because people are souls, and we work therapeutically under a secular culture which doesn't even allow us to bring religion into the therapy room, really. And it's crazy, because like how these two things don't go. We're operating from a reductionist, materialist, secular standpoint, and you're trying to heal holistically a person who's fundamentally a neshama much more than he's a goof with emotions. How are we gonna how? So they have to find all different ways of enclothing, panemius, and billions of different ways to be able to get it. But the most direct way to get it is this. Let's just finish the paragraph very quickly. I went very slowly today, but I think that it's so important. I think, just humbly, I could be wrong, but I think that this column is, it's really the whole thing. It's the whole thing. We're missing tefillah. We have tons of Torah. Let's just finish. This is what Chazal say. A person who spends too much time focusing in the tefillah, it could come to heartache. Shenamar, as the pasuk says in Mishlei Teicheles, Mumushacha Machla Lev. If you complain for too long, it'll cause an illness to the heart. And the Gemara says, okay, but what if a person has that, and a person has a broken heart, but it's too much? So Mate Kante, what should you do? Yasek B'Torah. Bring it to Torah. Shenamar ve'etz chayim tava ba. Ve'etz chayim tava ba. That you can find everything that you need in the eitz chayim, and that's the end of that pasuk. Eitz chayim will give the person what they need. And zeh shamarnu. This is what we said. Ki batfila dainu b'koyach. Tefillah. If all you have is tefillah, so then you're connected to a realm that's it's a subject. It can be there could be danger in that too. Again, the danger is not just in Torah. The danger is in extremes. And if a person replaces an extreme of Torah for an extreme of Tefillah, then they didn't actually replace anything, because they're still extreme. The tikkun is balance. I cannot express this clearly enough, and people who don't have a mind for nuance, who only hear black and white, it's like they can't hear what I'm saying. I'm saying we need both. I'm saying we need neshama and guf. I'm saying that we just need really both. And if we have one and not the other on either side, terribly, terribly dangerous, and the kalkulim of each are vast and deep. So the Rebbe says, tefillah alone is not either going to work. You gotta bring it to Torah. But the Torah has to be flowing forth from tefillah. It has to be both. If a person has the consciousness of emunah and that's all he has, that's not enough. Because it won't come down into your lived experience until it comes into liman halacha. And then it will come and we'll be able to bring it down into actuality. If I wanted to be a big mechutzef, I'll read the next paragraph, but it is late and I'll be mitzam to myself, as painful as it is. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should mamish bless us that we should be among those who are learning Gemara. We should be among the lamdanim even, but we should do it in a garden that's saturated with a mayan that's flowing forth from the Beis Hashem. Ki beisi beis tefillah kar l'chol ha'amim. Then we'll mamish be Yidden. Yidden l'chol davar. Yidden in every aspect of our lives, not just in the Beis Medrash, but Yidden in every interaction, Yidden in every word and thought and action. And this is what we need, and this is the consciousness of Geulah, as the Rebbe told us in Zion. The more this emunah spreads, more and more and more, until all the people, who are covering over kiss, who are covering over the pruta, which is prita sivase, which is davening and emunah, where tichla that ends. Az Yavah Mashiach, we should be zecha. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים,
על כל נשימה שאני